Hello everybody! In this lesson you will explore the complexity of factors influencing business. You will examine the situation in Kenya, Africa, which is the largest importer of second-hand clothing in East Africa. You will investigate the effects of political decisions and pandemics on the country's economic development. Next, you will identify and consider what business, community, and society opportunities would be arising from this situation. Second-hand clothing business is a complex chain of various relationships, impacts, influences, stakeholders, and politics. Second-hand clothing itself used to be given to charities as means of help to less fortunate people and countries. The majority of it was distributed to the global south with the aim to support economically less developed places. With the rise of fast fashion, an enormous increase of the number of the garments produced, sold and used, and also not used, along with the globalization and changes in our society, the need for clothing with the charity purpose decreased. Instead, a new business opportunity was created. This was a second-hand clothing business. We perceive second-hand clothing as a positive solution to the current overproduction and overconsumption of fashion. And yes, in many senses it is. We buy used clothes to save money, and at the same time we save them from going to landfill. That way we keep them in the closed loop. Still, second-hand clothing has many other impacts, mostly happening far away from us. So, when you donate your clothes to a textile collection point, it most likely travels to a sorting center where it's being forwarded to local charities, a small portion to recycling centers, but it is most likely that your garment will end up being exported as a second-hand clothing to one of the global south countries. Initially, a means of support, second-hand clothes are now considered as a huge problem and are causing environmental and human rights issues. Dead white men's clothes are being imported and then separated by its quality, from first selection to fourth selection. While only 18% is the top quality and goes for sale, most of the clothing ends up piled in landfills. But it doesn't only cause environmental issues. The rise of second-hand clothing caused the local fashion industry to suffer. The locally made fashion cannot compete with cheap imported clothing. And it doesn't end there. Increased poverty as a direct result of the imported clothing created slaves of the system. The kaya or kaya are the young female head porters. They can be as young as 14 years old. They are used for carrying heavy bales of clothing as needed, anywhere between importer and retailer. Due to the heavy weight of these bales, they are often injured or even die. Second-hand evolution started with charity shops in the UK when the Salvation Army opened the first charity shop in London in 1865. Throughout the time, the term thrift shop started to be used. Continuing through flea markets and consignment shops, second-hand clothing found its way to a red carpet too. Angelina Jolie wore a $26 thrifted dress on a red carpet in 2008, or Olivia Ford, chronically known for her vintage outfits. With easy access to online shops, second-hand clothing business was boosted in 2020 during the pandemic and is continuing to grow. The world of business and its direction depend on many factors. Can you name what influences the way the business is progressing? What do you think? What influences the way second-hand clothing is perceived and how it operates as a business in your country? How do political, social, legal, technical, and economic factors influence it? Try to find one example for each. Now you will read this article about second-hand business in Kenya. While reading, make a mind map of the content and what strikes you as the main influences on its development in recent years and now in the present day. Try to determine as many relationships and connections between the main points of this business and the whole situation around it. After reading it, you should have a mind map where you will record as much of its complexity as possible. Take your mind map from the beginning of this lesson and the one from the activity about Kenya. Compare them and try to answer the following. What are the biggest differences in your perception of second-hand clothing business in your country and in Kenya? Did you discover new areas or factors that influence this business while making this activity? And this is a hard one. Could you identify the biggest opportunities in the situation similar to those you identified in the current economic climate and state of second-hand business in Kenya? Read more about second-hand business here, or watch this video about Ghana second-hand market.